welcome back to Is It Ableist? My name is Devin, and I'm so happy to be back here with you all today. So we are here for episode number 12, and we are going to be talking about internalized ableism. Now, as I mentioned every single week, everything that I'm sharing with you in this video is purely from my own experience, but does not reflect the vast world. So I always encourage you to continue to do your research, to continue to find different avenues and experiences of other people, to go beyond just my videos. So with all of that said, without further ado, let's jump into this video. So what is internalized ableism? Well, it is ableism, as we have talked about the definition of ableism before. Well, it is ableism, as we've talked about in previous videos before. What am I saying? So, what is internalized ableism? Well, it is ableism that exists within yourself that has been perpetuated by white supremacy, colonization, generational trauma, and so many other different factors. But long story short, internalized ableism is the oh my god. This is not working right now. Okay. So what is internalized ableism? It is the ableism that exists within us on a physical, a mental, and emotional, and also a cellular level. Ableism goes so far back in our history in terms of coming from white supremacy, from colonization, and from generational trauma that has been passed down for generations. And the natural result of this is having so many internalized things that have been learned and are living in our existence, whether we're conscious or unconscious of it. And ableism is a big part of that. The truth of the matter is that all of us have experienced ableism in some way in our life, whether it's been directly or indirectly. Ableism has been a part of the human experience for a very long time, and we all have internalized ableism on some level. Just to give an example, if you ever got sick as a child and your parents said, "No, you're still getting up, you're going to school, I don't care if you have a fever, come on, get ready, let's go, you're going out the door, you're fine." That's an example of ableism. If you were in school and say that you have maybe ADD or ADHD, and you had a teacher who just said, "You just need to pay attention. You just need to focus. Why can't you focus? Why can't you just understand? Like, why can't you follow directions? Why can't you do these things?" Ableism. All of these things that have been shown and taught to us as we've grown up perpetuates internalized ableism. And that's why I want to talk more about this, how you can start to dismantle your own internalized ableism, start to heal, start to educate yourself, and hopefully find a place of compassion as well as consciousness in terms of ableism in your life. And specifically speaking to the disabled community, realizing that we have internalized ableism is hard. It's hard. And being able to accept ourselves in a world that tells us we shouldn't makes internalized ableism even harder to deal with. And so I want you to know that you have to have compassion and patience for yourself in dismantling your own ableism. And if you are at a point in your life where you're not sure how to deal with it, or you don't know how, or if you're a person who doesn't consider yourself to be disabled, whatever it may be, meet yourself where you are. And to able-bodied people, understand that disability is a spectrum. So there are some people that are disabled but don't consider themselves disabled. Or there are some people who truly define themselves within being a disabled person. It depends on the individual. It's different for everyone, and how we deal with internalized ableism is also different. This is going to shift and change depending on every person's life experiences. But just know that if you're a disabled person and you are struggling with internalized ableism, just know that I see you and you're not alone. And if you're a person who doesn't consider yourself to be disabled, I see you too, and I see you too, and just know that I see you too, and just know to stay strong in what you identify as. And if you are a disabled person who doesn't consider yourself disabled, or is struggling with considering yourself disabled due to internalized ableism and ableism in the greater world, just know that I see you as well, and that it is a process and it's going to take time. And if you decide that you want to start to break down those walls and you do want to fully identify yourself as a disabled person, that you have support, you're not alone, and to take your time. So I want to talk about this today in more of a general sense, and then connect it back to dance, because of course internalized ableism plays a very, very large role in dance. But I want to address this just on a general level as well, because it is something that so many people struggle with and that so many people are unaware of, and is a big part of why ableism continues to be such an issue. So I want to speak about this generally, and also how it pertains to the dance community as well. So the first thing is coming to terms with your disability and acknowledging that. And that is something that will look different for everyone. For some people, it's an easy process, and it's a process of validation. I have another disability, which is my chronic illness. I have endometriosis, and coming to terms with it and that acknowledgement was more of a relief for me, but it was also still a struggle. And so however your acknowledgement process goes, just know that it's valid. But it's hard to be gentle and be kind with yourself as you're learning to acknowledge and to accept that you have a disability. But it's a big part of it. So be gentle with yourself in acknowledging it, and ultimately finding yourself within it. Next is giving yourself time to heal. And I want to talk about this from the perspective of a disabled person, and then also able-bodied as well. As a disabled person, you you really want to give yourself time to go through this process and to heal from internalized ableism and the ableism that you will most likely still experience on a daily basis. It's a difficult battle to navigate and to fight, because in some ways your wounds from ableism will most likely be reopened. So it's very difficult to heal from. But if you are in a place of acceptance and acknowledging and starting to break down your own internalized ableism, just be patient with yourself and truly let yourself go through the healing process of that, because it's not an easy one. And it's most likely a process that you will probably have to go through many, many times throughout your life. As an able-bodied person, your process of healing is also going to look different. But you do have to heal from internalized ableism. You are going to have to heal from it in terms of your education, in terms of your unlearning, in terms of your relearning, in terms of starting to break down and dismantle the ableism that you have been taught and that you have been brought up in. And so that is also a healing process as well. As much as you are dismantling and unlearning and relearning, is also as much as you are healing generational trauma. Next is knowing your rights, and this is more specifically towards disabled people. Knowing your rights is incredibly important because, one, it can really make you feel empowered in your disability, to realize that you do have some type of legal support, some type of power base behind you should anything come up, and should you need protection in any way. Now, granted, is the system still flawed? Are there still a lot of issues with this? Absolutely. But as a disabled person, you do have rights. And it's so incredibly important for you to know this, because you never know when you may need some type of legal help with discrimination or with an injury or whatever the case may be. You may need help with this, and knowing your rights and knowing what you are entitled to is incredibly important. And as an able-bodied person, do your research in terms of the ADA. What is it? Just familiarizing yourself with accessibility, with disability. You never know when you could have a disabled person in your life, or when disability could come to you in some kind of way that you're not expecting it. Knowing these things, having knowledge of these things, is just going to make you more connected to the world, and it's also going to start to break down your internalized ableism as well, that you may or may not be fully conscious of. And last thing is finding support, and this is humongous for both able-bodied and disabled people. But surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded, who are on similar journeys, who are on an activist journey, or some type of something that mirrors where you are in your life, is going to be really important in terms of your process of dismantling ableism and just whatever it is, whatever you're focusing on, whatever your journey may be. Especially as a disabled person, having a support group is more important than I can truly express. Surrounding yourself with people who truly understand you, who truly understand what you go through on a daily basis, who you can talk to and who you can be honest with and just transparent and share your feelings, share your good days, share your bad days, share whatever, is going to be truly life-saving for you. And it's so important. And I know that having support is not accessible to everyone, unfortunately. And there are so many people in this world who don't have a support system. And it really makes a difference. So if you do have access to some type of support system, please, please, please take advantage of it. It will make your process so much easier. It will make your life so much easier. And it just surrounds you with people who are in the same place that you are, or who understand you, and who can really give some extra validation to you if you need it. For my able-bodied people, have conversations. Continue to do your research. Continue to unlearn, relearn, dismantle all of the things that we are hopefully working for in the new world. If activism is a part of your life, include disability in your activism. Because as I mentioned before in another video, most of the time when you get into marginalized groups and marginalization within marginalization, as I like to call it, when you start to talk about disability, the statistics are undoubtedly worse. So bringing awareness, bringing consciousness, activism for the disabled community is incredibly important. Another thing is to listen. A lot of times ableism and internalized ableism presents itself as centering and not listening to those who have disabilities, not letting us explain to you what we're dealing with, what works for us, and ultimately not being able to take constructive criticism of us expressing when something doesn't work for us and when something is in fact ableist. The best thing that you can do is to not center yourself and to listen to disabled voices when they speak. So how does this all pertain to dance? First reason is, so how does this all pertain to dance? Well, if you are someone who is actively working on unlearning and relearning and dismantling and decolonizing all the things that we're wanting for this new world, dismantling ableism and internalized ableism is undeniably going to spill over into your dance career. Because, as we know, dance is political, dance is reflective of life. Dance is a reflection of who we are as people. And if we are focusing our energy on dismantling all of these things that were set in place before we even came to this planet, that is going to undeniably start to spill over into our careers. So, what can you do as a dance educator or just a dancer in general to start to break down ableism and internalize ableism? The first thing I would suggest is starting to recognize ableist patterns. There are so many ableist patterns that exist within our collective existence, and within dance, those ableist patterns are the foundation of what we do. So starting to become more conscious of it, things like language and so many different avenues in terms of accessibility, starting to recognize those and be conscious of those and starting to slowly change those is going to make a big difference in starting to dismantle this. It's going to make a big difference in starting to dismantle. Is going to make a difference. Is going to make a difference in starting to dismantle. Is going to make a difference in starting to dismantle. Link and starting to dismantle your. Is going to make a difference in starting to dismantle your own internalized ableism. So take the time to start to become conscious. Just making the decision that you want to become conscious and then therefore putting action to it is going to really be the catalyst for that. And you will start to recognize and start to see those ableist patterns as they reoccur within the classroom, within your choreographic process, whatever it may be. The next thing is accepting that it is not about accepting that it is not about you. What do I mean by that? And I'm specifically really speaking to educators and choreographers here. Going back to what I said earlier, this connects to centering. That as a dance educator, realizing that if you have a student, a parent, whoever it may be, holding you accountable for ableism that is existing within your space, you must realize that this is not about you, that it is not a defamation of your character, that it is not saying that you are a bad teacher or that you're not qualified or whatever the case may be. It is a learning opportunity. This is the moment when you as the educator become the educated. These are important moments. This is when you have to take a step back and listen, and then take what you've heard and apply it and research it, and understand it, and bring it into your space so that you can change it and make your space better. It's not about you. It's not about your ability to do your job. It is simply about making a more inclusive space. And the truth of the matter is that most of the time in dance spaces, these spaces are not created for people with disabilities to come into. So most likely, there is some ableist foundation within your foundation. That is not a reflection of your character as a person. It is just a reflection of the foundation that has been passed down. So if there is a moment where you are being held accountable for this, please listen, please learn, and please take it into your experience so that you can create a better space for everyone to be included in. Next is taking accountability. Being able to have those moments of, I didn't understand that before, but I understand it now. Or, I don't fully understand this yet, but I'm going to do my best to understand. Can we have a conversation? Things like that. Taking accountability for your ableism and how it's presenting, and if it is being shown to you, how can you take that and how can you change that? Accountability is a big part of being able to heal ableism, racism, sexism, gender inequality, so many different things. Taking accountability is the first step of allowing yourself to be cracked open and to start to learn and to start to unlearn and relearn. Accountability is the key to that. So take accountability for starting to unravel your own internalized ableism. And if you're still not aware of this and it's brought to you, this is where accountability is even more important. And again, it's not about you. It's not about your character as a person. It is about learning and growing and understanding that there are things about your teaching and also potentially about you just as a human existing within this world that are inherently ableist, that has been passed down from generation to generation. And now it's in your hands to take the accountability to start to change and to start to heal that. Next is having conversations and asking questions. Educators, choreographers, please ask questions. Now, when I say ask questions, I do not mean educate me. That is not what I mean. You are responsible for your education. When I talk about questions, especially when you are talking to disabled people, honestly, not just disabled people, whoever you're talking to, take responsibility for the questions that you are asking. And if you are asking questions of a disabled person, and say that this person is your student, whatever it may be, your first question needs to be, do you have space for? Are you okay with me asking blank? Can we have a conversation about blank? And then continue from there. Because lead in with consent is what I'm saying. Lead in with consent for these conversations, because there's something called emotional labor that no matter what you do, no matter what you say, there's going to be some emotional labor involved. And that 100% rings true in terms of having conversations with disabled people. So I do encourage you to ask questions or be open when you don't understand something, because you're creating a line of communication that also is going to tell us that you care. And dance educators, I'm going to tell you right now, not engaging with your disabled students, not asking any questions about their disability, or just not being engaged with it whatsoever, especially if they have been open with you about it and seem like they're open and like they want to have a conversation, you not acknowledging it is harmful. And that just shows that you don't care, that you're not engaged, and that you are more tuned into your able-bodied students. So lead in with your questions with consent and then go from there. And don't be afraid to say and be honest when you don't understand something. Trust me, honesty is something that I, as a disabled person, value. I value educators who say to me, I don't understand. I'm not really sure how to teach you this. I don't really know what to do, but I want to do the work to figure it out. That means a lot to me as a disabled dancer. That means a lot. Those are the teachers that I connect the most with, are the ones who are like, I really don't know what to do, but I want to make sure that I can be the best educator for you that I can be. So ask the questions, but always lead in with consent. Last thing I want to say is that if you are someone who has an immense amount of privilege, use it when it is necessary. When it is necessary to bring about change. And what do I mean by this? Well, there's been a lot of times where I have had friends who were white, people who were in certain positions of power that were like, you know what? I can do these certain things to help you out. let's have a conversation about this and see what we can do together and how we can make things better. I can kind of give you the in for this. It works the same way with dancing. I am well aware that there are conversations, things that have happened in my life, some very recently, that would not have happened without the privilege that some of my friends and co-workers and whatever, people in my life, I know that some of these things wouldn't have happened without them and without their privilege, because I do not have that same privilege. And it wasn't a matter of me asking them, hey, use your privilege. No, it was a thing of them realizing where privilege can shift from being a power dynamic to making change. That's the difference here. Because, for instance, if you're a white person, you have privilege, whether you acknowledge that or not, whether you want to. If you are a fully able-bodied person, you have privilege, whether you want to admit that or not. If you are a disabled person, but you're able-bodied passing, such as myself, you have privilege, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. There is some form of privilege on some level. But how you use that privilege makes a difference. Did we decide what privilege is and how it exists in the world? I didn't decide it. I definitely didn't decide it. Someone did, but it wasn't me. And I doubt that it was any of the people that I associate with. But a lot of the people I surround myself with are people who realize how their privilege can be used to change the world for the better, not to continue to perpetuate this hierarchy and this system of power. So when I say use your privilege, use it for change. Use it to call people in. Use it to bring people to the table that otherwise wouldn't be invited. That's how you use your privilege. And if you are in the dance community and you know the power of your privilege, use it to make sure that everyone is included, that no one is left behind, that these spaces can include anyone and everyone. That's how you use privilege. So I hope that you all enjoyed this episode of Is It Ableist? And as always, I post every single Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time and 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for coming back here with me, and I will see you next week. Bye.